This is the Oz Report for March 23rd, 2025. And we're not going to start with Plex or raw materials today. Today, I really want to start with a big summary of what has been happening, just because it's so important to anyone that has come in, maybe not understanding the patch or not knowing that there was a huge patch. So, just a quick summary of what the March 12th patch did to the EVE economy. So, on the one hand, we have tier 3 mining sites in nullsec that are geared towards larger rocks, towards easing some of the very high mineral prices that we have seen in the market lately, specifically aimed at stuff like morphite. And that's why we're seeing morphite prices drop heavily from all-time highs, to be fair. And then we also saw the bill of material for tier 1 battleships and capital ships reduced by about 20% to 25% across the board. And so that has reduced the demand in terms of the bill of material, of the materials that go into building these. But on the other hand, the anticipation of cheaper ships and overall the drop in mineral prices has increased capital production, specifically dread production and battleship production. And so that is going against the 20% material reduction right now. So we haven't seen the end of that playing out. It's going to take a few months. And then thirdly, we are seeing new bottlenecks in capital production because things like the exploration loot or wormhole gases are absolutely needed to create these capital ships that are now in higher production. But on the other hand, they are also targeted by traders that might be looking to profit from these changes, or also possibly from other alliances that are trying to keep other groups from producing large-scale capital ships. So lots of market shenanigans going on, lots of changes going on. This is a time in EVE Online that has seen as much change as we've rarely seen before. And so it's a very exciting time to play EVE. It's a very exciting time to look at the economy of EVE, but certainly we haven't seen the end of it. So having said that, let's jump into some specifics. And for that, I'm going to pull up my market dashboard here. If we look at what's going on overall, we see, first of all, so mineral prices are down about 3%. They were down, I don't know, about 5% last week. This week was very erratic. And they would be down a lot more than 3% if it wasn't for Noxium. Because what we're seeing right now is morphite is down 30% this week. And morphite is a big part of the economy, right? So morphite being down 30% means either players with stockpiles are reacting if they did have any stockpiles left, but more so, there's way more morphite entering the system because of the changes in the March 12th patch. We see Maxilon down 16%. It's another big drop. So this is all coming from very, very high mineral prices. So this is really just going back into spheres of quote-unquote normal. But nevertheless, good to see. Megasite down 6%. And then the big one that is counteracting this is Noxium, because Noxium was essentially bought out of the market this week. So Noxium was low, and now we only have about 0.2 trade days left on Noxium, which is basically nothing. And the price is up 60%. And so all of these working against each other means the market is only down 3%, but the big minerals that were targeted by this change actually did drop significantly, and that's morphite and Maxilon. On the other hand, if we move down this list and look at the other things, one thing we have to point out is fullerenes. So this is wormhole gases. This is another component of specifically of dread production, for example. We're seeing a lot of demand that is not directly linked to basic minerals. So this comes only from wormholes, and if it hasn't been in as high demand as it is now over the last months and years, and that's why the market just isn't there. If you look at the availability, we see less than one trade day available of fullerenes. And so especially things like fullerite C32, C28, or C84, they're up 20 to 30% in the market right now in prices, and their stockpiles or their availability in sell orders in the forge is essentially zero. And so if you're in a wormhole, if you have access to wormholes, go and mine that gas, because those prices overall of fullerenes are now trading 40% above the yearly average, and it's not like they were cheap before. And so that's one big thing. The other thing is exploration loot, as I alluded to in my introduction. So you're looking at the molecular forging tools, molecular forged materials, and advanced protective technology as a whole. They're spiking like crazy. So this is exploration loot from higher tier ghost side or sleeper side. So they are not easily farmed. These are rare materials, and so people have to go out there and do exploration for this market to be supplied. And barring large stockpiles out there, these are going to be very, very spiky right now because people are ramping up dread production, and the supply for these markets it just isn't there. And so this is going to have to be adjusted over time. We have to see if the drop levels are high enough to support dread production. If they are not high enough, then this could be a massive bottleneck in dread production, and that would have to be the next lever that CCP would have to address if they don't want to stifle capital production going forward. But March 12th was a start. So it was a start aimed at relieving some of the basic mineral bottlenecks that we had. And so now we have to look at others like wormhole gases and exploration loot to see whether their level can support the market or not. This shouldn't lead to overall dread prices rising again. It's just hampering the drop in prices. What we're seeing now is just short-term market reactions, because not only, as I said in the intro, not only industrialists are after these, but also market traders might be looking to make a buck, or alliances might be shutting others out of the production of these dreads and other ships. Right? The last raw material I want to mention is the rogue drone components, so that you see here. So overall up 95% in price. If you look at the details, this is mostly due to drone cerebral fragments. So those are the biggest group of components in rogue drone components. And one big reason for this is that essentially rogue drones were in very, very rogue drone components were in very low demand, because a big part of, or a large chunk of them, goes into excavator drones. Excavator mining drones, for example, are the pinnacle of drone production. They are several hundred million worth right now, price, I don't know, around 220 million a pop, or maybe even now up to 250, 270 million. And they have to act as a big sink for these rogue drone components, because otherwise the market is way oversupplied. In the last few years, since there was very, very much less large-scale mining going on, especially Rorqual mining, the use of excavator drones was very low, and the demand was very low. The March 12th patch has turned that around, and now we're seeing a lot of demand for excavator drones and the components of excavator drones. And that's why we're seeing things like drone cerebral fragments increasing in price drastically, doubling in price, and basically several times this week selling out of the market. So this is not this is not going to be a big bottleneck going forward. This just makes drone lands a little bit more attractive as a crabbing region again, because it makes the loot more valuable. And it had basically fallen into a huge hole in the last few years after rorquals weren't used anymore for mining. And so lots of massive changes on the raw material side this week. And that's very exciting to see, and it's great being part of it and seeing this unfold, especially as since I'm part of the CSM and have architected some of these changes together with the other CSMers and CCP. Now, let's talk quickly about Plex and Plex adjacent items. So Plex is fairly steady this week, down a little bit, and that's because the 50% off Omega and MC multiple pilot training certificate sale is going on. This is a quarterly sale that always happens. This is in the cash store, not in the New Eden store. And so if you do use multiple pilot training certificates, or you have use for them, then this is a very, very good value sale. That also means that Plex prices are not that much under pressure, because people are using this sale rather than Plex to subscribe to Omega, for example, or they're at least not using a sale in the New Eden store in place of this sale. And so this is always a very, very popular sale. If let me plug it at that point, if you are using it, please use creator code Oz or any of the creator codes in the New Eden store as you're making content like this possible by doing so. The big news on the on the Plex and skill point side this week is the large skill injectors, because those are up 2% and even higher in the market this week, partly because of the March 12th patch. I think people are coming back in, people are upskilling for mining again, people are redistributing skill points, and so skill injectors, they have been trending down for a long time, and now they're starting to recover, which is a good thing. If you look at the skill farming formula, the skill farming formula is still negative 900. So I can show you over here. So this is the skill farming formula. It's still massively negative, but that's because most skill farmers rely on sales, as we have said here before. Still, overall, if you're running one character on a 12-month Plex subscription, you're losing 600 million if you're not doing anything else on it. Right. So the pure skill farms still heavily rely on big sales to make it profitable, and even then, it's not in a good place, which is not a bad thing. It's just a fact, right? Now, what else do we have going on in the market? Let's go over to our dashboard here and look at the trending up, trending down items. Trending up, I already mentioned drones rebuild fragments, 113% up. Those are just exploding, and that's mostly excavator drones. We see the Legion up here, and that's kind of a double whammy. One, there was a lot of Legion demand this week, as we can see in the drop in supply. So Legions are basically sold out in the forge, but also they also require wormhole gas. So they're hit by increasing raw material prices and increased demand. So Legion, definitely a hot item this week, up 80% in price. Don't buy them right now if you don't absolutely have to. If you have them, sell them. If you can make them, make them. All right. We already talked about Noxium up 60%. That's pretty crazy. Isotropic Deposition Guide is one of those exploration loot items that has gone up in price massively as capital production ramps up. And the full arenes, C28, C84 that we see here are the wormhole gases I was mentioning. Looking at the next to last item there, the capital core temperature regulator up 20%. Those are just all over the place, right? If you go down here, you can see that they are trading 40% below 52-week average. They are a mid component for capital ships. So they are the ones that gather up all the basic minerals and the PI and make it into a capital component. and they have been all over the place. Some people were dumping them because they were nervous of the patch dropping the price. Then the raw materials going into them dropped by 20%. That was dropping the price, but then increased demand made the price go back up. So right now, overall, just the market's just all over the place. If we look at what's trending down, we already talked about Morphite down 30%. Some of these, this is another example. The Meta Operant Neuralink Enhancer is another exploration loot item that goes into capital ships all over the place, right? Down 20% this week. This just shows how erratic the market is right now. Maxilon down 17%. We already talked about that. And then you're already also seeing some T2 salvage up and down, and Neuralink protection cells is another capital ship component that is down 13% this week. And if we're looking at what's trading at high volume, so what are people trading much more than they were before, then look at this. The top 10 has 5 battleships in it. The Redeemer, the Tempest Fleet issue, the Megathron, Tempest, Raven. People are building battleships, people are flying battleships, and that is fantastic to see. That is going to have meta impacts, as we saw in the interview with YP earlier, and it's actually fantastic to see. If we go over here and look at what's in low supply, we talked about the Legion. Noxium basically gone from the market. A bunch of Fullerenes gone from the market. Plex is always there, right? The last month, 0.2 trade days of Plex. There's just not a lot there, and something we've discussed at length in previous reports. Interesting, also very short supply. We see 2 Dead Space modules there: the Corpi A-type multispectrum coating and the Corpus X-type thermal armor hardener. We've seen that a lot. So there are a lot of new doctrines out there. There are a lot of doctrines using Dead Space modules out there. A lot of Dead Space modules are being destroyed in large battles, and that's just fueling that market. Overall, you guys know this, one of my favorite things to trade in. Limited supply, very high demand, super fun. So go and look at some Dead Space modules if you want to have some excitement in trading. If we look down here into most underpriced items, the Capital Core temperature regulator I mentioned earlier, it's just very, very cheap right now. It should have dropped by 20% anyway, but it dropped even more. So that's just basic erratic market movements right now. And then we have the typical moon materials in here that we've seen in the last year, ever since Metanox dropped. And then also we're seeing some battleships here, 30% under 52-week average. That's great to see. The Tempest, the Dominix, cheap battleships are just great for EVO 9. And so let me have a look at my notes to see if we've missed anything else. I think we've touched on everything. Yeah, amazing time to cover the markets in EVE Online. Amazing time, I think, to play EVE Online. There's a lot of stuff here happening for many different play styles. And so, go out there, play EVE, have fun, and I'll see you guys next week for the next